keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes along with Aidan McGee, Emily Carver, Patrick Christys and Aaron Bastani. Now tonight on the show, I'm going to tell you why I've got no pride in pride.
And I'm going to tell you why it's time for Britain to ditch the death tax.
Has the BBC finally lost the plot?
Should asylum seekers who refuse taxpayer-funded hotels be deported?
And is the university sector working for anyone, graduates or non-graduates alike?
It's 8 o'clock and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5. This is the best Saturday night takeaway that you could order. Expect spicy debate, fiery opinion and a huge topping of fun. Every week you join Albie, Emily, Benjamin and myself along with a guest star, but not this week. We've got an Albie and Benjamin Butterworth-shaped hole in the lineup tonight. One could say we've got rid of the woke. Just joking. Tonight, we've got the sports supremo and housewife favourite, Aidan McGee. Aaron Bastani's bringing a sprinkle of socialist sugar. And back by popular demand, it's Patrick Christys.
Love it. The premise of the show is simple. Every week, the same tonight, each host gets 60 seconds to outline their argument about their chosen topic. Then we all pile in, and of course, we want to know your views as well. Please do get in touch throughout the show by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk. But before we all start tearing each other apart, it is your Saturday Night News with Bethany Elsey.
Good evening, I'm Bethany Elsey with your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and other international leaders have expressed their condolences after India's worst rail disaster for decades. At least 288 people have been killed and around 850 injured in the accident in the eastern state of Odisha. 3 trains were involved. 2 passenger trains collided when one derailed and both then crashed into a goods train. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has vowed to punish anyone responsible.
I am deeply pained. It's beyond sad and very disturbing. The government will leave no stone unturned and will provide the best treatment to the people who've been injured. The relatives who we've lost can't come back, but the government is with their families in this hour of grief.
31 people have been arrested in connection with plans to disrupt the Epsom Derby, including one protester who ran onto the track as the race began. Activists from the group Animal Rising had threatened to cancel the event, despite a High Court injunction banning them from doing so. The group said they wanted to protect the horses and were willing to put their bodies on the line. They also accused police of heavy-handedness and abusing their powers. A woman in her 70s has died following a dog attack in Warwickshire. The incident took place on Kathleen Avenue in Bedworth yesterday afternoon. A man and a woman have been arrested on suspicion of having a dangerously out-of-control dog and owning a banned breed. And Manchester City have beaten Manchester United 2-1 to win the FA Cup final at Wembley. Ilkay Gundogan scored after 12 seconds. That's the fastest goal in FA Cup final history. United's Bruno Fernandes equalised, scoring a penalty at 33 minutes, but Gundogan scored another to restore City's lead in the second half. City's now on course to complete the treble, winning the Premier League, FA Cup and Champions League in the same season, which takes place next Saturday. Here's some fan reaction.
2 out of 3, we're going to do the treble. We're going to take it from them after a whole history of hurt, 100-odd years of them being all over us. But this is our year, this is our time.
First goal, 13 seconds, 15 seconds. And I've just lost for words.
Bit dejected, living in City shadow the last 4 or 5 years. It's obviously not what we want, but probably what's expected, in all honesty. Yeah, bit of a reality check for United.
You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+, radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to the Saturday 5.
It is Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Emily Carver and I can promise that you are in for a very lively hour. So let's crack on with tonight's first debate.
To kick things off, it's Emily and she's going to tell us what she thinks about the BBC's latest decision to give teenage TikTok terror a platform on Newsnight. It's time for the Carver Palaver.
It is indeed. So the mother of TikTok prankster, or the internet's favourite juvenile delinquent, has broken her silence. She says she's had enough of his antics and does not support what he's doing. Now, I can't comment on her as a parent, but I think we can all agree with her claim that her son needs to get a job. Apparently, though, our taxpayer-funded state broadcaster has already given Mizzy a job. According to a rather bizarre editorial decision by the BBC Newsnight team, the tag-wearing criminal appears now to be some kind of social commentator or representative of the youth. Someone the BBC must think is worth listening to. Why else would they give him a platform? What a terribly sad indictment of the state of our society. So let's watch a bit of the surreal interview.
Andrew Tate's got that confidence in a way, in a different way. I want to talk to you about some of the things that Andrew Tate has said. And I wonder if you think it's problematic to get in tow with them. So, for example, things he said, women belong to men. On a plane, there's a female pilot I noticed, most women can't even drive. He said, I go out and I F somebody, I come home to my woman, that's not cheating, that's exercise. And this last one here, if I caught a woman cheating, it's bang out the machete, boom in her face, grip her by the neck. That is hate speak. Presumably, You don't go along with that kind of speak,
Of course I don't go along with that. I don't look up to Andrew Tate. I don't think he's a role model or anything. And I don't look up to nobody. I am my own person. Everyone.
So, as you just saw, the BBC is now seriously asking a bloke who gets his kicks from trespassing into people's homes, intimidating women and targeting Orthodox Jewish people for clicks, what he thinks about Andrew Tate, a misogynist who's under house arrest in Romania. So, we're supposed to care about what reprobate Mizzy, whose only claim to fame is being an absolute moron, it seems, thinks about Andrew Tate. I certainly don't. And judging by Mizzy's body language, tone and his responses, he has absolutely no idea why the BBC cares either. Let's take a look.
No. That doesn't matter to me. I'm not here through Andrew Tate. I'm not here to report Andrew Tate. I'm not here to make money out of Andrew Tate. That's what you man are doing, basically.
No, but
realistically, that's what you're doing.
No, but yeah.
Well, there you go. It was bad enough when Piers Morgan gave the teenage toad a platform. It's doubly bad when it's our state broadcaster. BBC Newsnight is supposed to be the type of show that makes politicians quiver, puts experts to task, and asks the biggest questions of the day. Is anyone keeping track? In my book, this has got to be a new low for the broadcaster. Well, there we go. To my wonderful panel, let's start off by asking, why do you think the BBC did this? Darren.
I think it's actually really dangerous that it's actually given people an incentive to do what Mizzy did, because actually they think, oh, I'll get on BBC Newsnight. That's canny. Mother will be very proud of me if I do that. I think ultimately the BBC are trying to appeal to a younger audience, and they think by getting someone that's had success, if I can use that word, on TikTok, that actually they'll cater to a brand new audience, when actually they're just making themselves look like total tits, if I can say.
What's the value of it? I mean, you might as well just do a show where you ask a pigeon to do a Sudoku. I mean, what's the point of it, really? I mean, up next is Mizzy's view on the Iraq war. I mean, who cares?
I mean,
we hear every 2 minutes that we need public service broadcasting. How is this public service broadcasting?
But he's not. So I was going to say, he wasn't. As you say, Piers Morgan did it as well. I mean, terrestrial ratings, particularly the BBC, are flagging a bit, aren't they, as well as ITV? I mean, it's just shock value, surely. That's all it is.
But do you find it depressing, Aaron, that it is our state broadcaster that is doing this? No one cares what, privately owned companies choose to broadcast, but this is something we all pay into. Is it supposed to have higher standards?
I think it's meant to have higher standards. Often it falls short. But I would sort of back up what Darren said a moment ago and add one more thing, which it tells me the BBC has a real lack of confidence in the kinds of things they need to be reporting on and how, when dealing with a younger audience. They think, TikTok, young guy, loads of clicks, loads of attention, we should be talking about it. Well, no, I think that shows really a lack of, strength in their editorial decisions and confidence.
Now, Baroness Claire Fox, I don't know if any of you saw, but she tweeted earlier today or yesterday, whenever this interview came out, she tweeted that he was mocking the BBC. And that's exactly how it appeared, from the way he had his knee up against the table, from the way he was looking around, from the way he was saying, why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
He was mocking our public broadcaster, which is an absolute shame, not only to the broadcaster, but to the country.
Yeah, well, it makes them look totally pathetic. And even his mother, though, has come out and said, I just want him to get a job, right? Maybe he can be a runner at the BBC. Who knows?
My mum said that, actually, about me.
Mine still does, to be fair. But with that, I think this guy has shown absolutely no remorse whatsoever, pretty much, apart from some kind of cat-handed apology. But he is obviously going to continue to do things and behave in a way that is morally reprehensible. And this is feeding his ego. I do think, genuinely, that Mizzy does really believe that he has got this movement and that he is doing something rather special. And so if you then get him on Newsnight, which is supposed to be a very highbrow show, and you then start asking him views on...
Again, Newsnight's ratings have been plummeting for years and years.
But you're validating him, and so he's going to keep doing it. He thinks, it's basic reward action, isn't it? Like when you give a dog a treat, right? If I keep doing this, I get this reward.
I think he came across terribly. I've looked at the tweets below. There was hardly anyone in support. It almost outed him as being a bit of a fool. And I don't think that necessarily did. It paints the broadcaster a bad light, yes, but he's the loser out of it. What's he going to get out of it long term?
But do you not think, if the BBC had him on and essentially made him look bad by asking pertinent questions that made him look silly, instead they actually genuinely asked him his opinion on Andrew Tate and his opinion on why young men look up to people like Andrew Tate. Why should we care?
It was a give him enough rope. It was a give him enough rope situation.
No, but she asked him
looks
serious
foolish.
questions.
Doesn't matter.
I don't think so. I think the BBC was trying to look in touch with young people, trying to get young people watching, and I actually think it makes them look very, very out of touch to think that this boy represents youth.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, Emily, do you think there's any currency or credit to the BBC for having that conversation, though? Do you think people should be asking why do so many young people like Andrew Tate?
Not asking Mizzy, though.
That's exactly it. It's a hugely important question. And it was just bizarre seeing Kirsty Walk ask Mizzy about Andrew Tate, and you think, this is an operation...
And there was a feminist sat on the other side.
I didn't hear a peep from her, actually.
No, she didn't get any. Sorry, no, you finished your sentence.
No. I mean, but there are serious questions, I think, for Mizzy, and there is a commentary to be had about disaffected youth of the day and how we handle them and infantilise them and then promote them.
Yeah, we'll leave that one there.
Shocking.
Then. Yes, indeed. Up next, though, there's nothing more certain in life than death and taxes. But should there be taxes after death? It's time for McGee's Meltdown.
Take it away.
Oh, we're doing it now. Sorry, I thought we were going to break. I do apologise.
Go on, Aidan.
Well, look, I think inheritance tax is quite... It's in the news this week. The Daily Telegraph have launched a campaign to try and abolish it completely. We look at examples in Sweden. 20 years ago, they decided to abolish it altogether. It had been coming down incrementally year on year since the 1980s. They got rid of it eventually in 2004. Academics, economists in Scandinavia believe that it actually improved productivity and it loosened the kind of what's the best way to describe it? Some of the people some of the population reported later on that it was good for their expenditure. It allowed them to spend money on other priorities in the country. So I think that I've had this situation myself. I'm speaking from personal experience. My father died 2 years ago, and so I've been hit with inheritance tax quite badly. I just think with all the taxes that we pay, we think about things like income tax. We've got the highest tax take we've had, or the highest tax burden we've had in 70 years. There's income tax, VAT at 20%. That's risen over my lifetime. It was 15% back in the early 90s. It's up to 20 now. There's talk that it might even go up even further. Stamp duty, I think, is a very unfair tax. I can't think of many other countries in the Western world where you literally have to pay or find money to buy a house. I appreciate that in other cultures, house building or house ownership isn't quite as prevalent as it is here, but it does seem very unfair. And then, of course, right at the end, when you're hit with a pot, you're left with a pot, and then suddenly it's hit by up to 40%. Yes, there are boundaries at which you can keep some of your wealth, but I also think it stifles ambition. Some people don't necessarily work all their life and accumulate wealth to buy a Bentley or a new house. Sometimes they do it for the betterment of their children and their grandchildren. Where's the incentive for them to do that if all they know at the end of it, or all they have to come at the end of it, is that it's going to be taxed to the hilt? And I think it's deeply unfair. I think it's time to abolish it altogether. I appreciate, though, there are arguments to the contrary. And I also say as well, it only actually accounts for about 0.5% of overall government income, so it's not exactly making a big splash on the balance sheet either.
That's a really good point when you made the point about, people buying Bentleys and things. It does incentivise people to just spend frivolously in their final years or throughout their lives rather than actually save. I think it's better that money... Some people might think that it's better that their money, their hard-earned cash, goes to their children or their grandchildren rather than on a swanky car, but you get more for your money if you don't.
Yeah, true, but then I suppose the counter-argument to that would be that at least when you're spending towards the end of your life, you are creating some kind of wealth. You are moving money around the economy, it's being taxed again and again. But your money is taxed again and again and again throughout your life. I mean, you pay tax in all... pretty much everything you do. You know how that all works. We can't really work any other way. But it just seems it's unfair at the end. You've got this pot you've been working for. You might have plenty of children. You might have no children. You might have other priorities. You might give it to your relatives or Battersea Dogs Home or something like that. But you should be allowed to do that without it being taxed at the end of it.
I mean, the stealth tax nature as well, though, of saying we're going to keep the thresholds as they are. So say someone bought a property under Margaret Thatcher's right to buy.
Yeah, in the
and
80s,
that property's now worth a lot more money than it was back in the day, and inflation is going up and up and up, and thanks in large part to the lockdowns that we all endured. And we're saying to people, you're not actually a wealthy person, but we're not going to let you pass on that property. Actually, we're going to ensure that your family, going through the heartache of losing you, have to then go through the administration and fear of selling the property and losing that money.
There's also, from an emotional point of view, and I experienced it myself, it's the awkward conversations that you have to have with loved ones. You know, my dad, it's very difficult with my dad. He had Alzheimer's. You know, it was a ticking time bomb to kind of get the conversation out before he lost his mind, effectively. I'm sorry to have to say it that way, but that's how it was. And so many people have that. You know, I would probably be like it myself. If I felt my kids were trying to attack my wealth, I'd probably be like...
Absolutely.
I'd recoil a little bit, and I'd, you know, it just creates tension in families as well.
So much. Does it make things more equal, Aaron, though?
I think there's strong arguments for and against. I disagree with some of the core premises there. So, for instance, only 7% of the country pays this tax. And you said about buying stuff at the end of your life, you obviously pay VAT on that, right? So you're looking at 20% there as well. So I think that either or doesn't quite work. And I'm very sympathetic to somebody who inherits a house worth £600,000, £700,000, £800,000. Very sympathetic to the fact that you shouldn't have to pay an inheritance tax.
This is part of the problem as well.
Which is most people, of course, but it's not raising the most money.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt, but I was just saying that the problem is that the boundaries are a little bit... threshold's a little bit out of date as well. So the 325 per parent threshold was put in when was that? 2009. So since then, we've had property prices incrementally rising throughout the country. Lots of people who wouldn't be considered for that tax have been lifted into it.
But I would add, sorry, quickly, somebody like Nadim Zahawi, who said we should scrap it, he has a property portfolio of £100 million. He personally stands to gain £40 million from that tax being
But do you think that's why he's doing it?
Well, no, I'm not going to... I mean, it's a bit like a brewer
that's
saying...
what you're suggesting,
It's a bit like a brewer saying, let's scrap beer tax, right? I mean, you know... So I think somebody of that extraordinary wealth... Could Nadim Zahawi have made £100 million in Iraq? No. He owes something to this community, this nation, and I think that's one way of...
And I understand that, but for me, it's more of a moral thing, OK? Because I really do want to see people who work all their lives and pay into a system all of their lives and decide that they want to leave something to the future generation, which a lot of people do. And I think that gets lost on people who are a bit younger, who are kicking and screaming, saying, we need to pay more tax. I think they forget that a lot of our elderly people, actually one of, if not their top priority, is to know that the generation coming after them is actually safe and secure. And this is something that I think is actually inherently wrong in our society at the minute. That if you do happen to have someone who's often a self-made individual, you know, there's a lot of first-generation Irish immigrants, for example, who worked in the building trade, did everything right, worked their way up, they end up owning a property that is now, under today's standards, worth £1 million or something, which actually...
if I can say, you've got family experience of this, haven't you?
Oh, I've got family experience of it, where someone who was, absolutely worked that... I mean, it's the kind of thing that has an impact on your physical health, which unfortunately can therefore lead to premature death, right? And then you end up getting absolutely clobbered, and you think, well, you know, is that really fair? And I would also question as well, today, I don't think our tax is being well spent. If you look around at our public services and where we are spending the money at the moment and how we're spending it and the manner in which
we'll get onto one way.
I just don't think I could tolerate it if everything was working well, everything was running smoothly.
Can I throw it out there, though? I mean, one of the criticisms of inheritance tax is that not inheritance tax, but abolishing inheritance tax is that you're passing wealth down to kids who were probably quite advantaged anyway. By just plonking that wealth in their accounts, are you stifling creativity? Are you stifling ambition?
I don't think the state will necessarily spend it better.
That would be my argument.
You know, little Charles.
I mean,
Horatio, who's
I would
inherited
be really worried if I had lots of money leaving it to a kid. I would personally be very worried. I think
usually they're adult children, right?
Well, you call the kid, it's your child, right? I would overcompensate. I actually think if I was well off or uber successful, I'd probably be quite harsh to the kids to be like, look, life isn't that easy. Things don't come to you that easily. So
I do see that.
There is that, actually. I intend to spend everything.
But presumably, with respect, you wouldn't rather leave it to Jeremy Hunt.
Well, I'm not Jeremy Hunt.
On that note, right, still to come tonight, Darren is going to explain why he thinks the virtue signalling Pride Month, I can't believe it's a whole month, is a party to which many gay people simply aren't invited. Aaron is going to tell us why all under 45-year-olds are being let down by the importance we place on universities or something like that. And Patrick is going to tell us why asylum seekers who refuse accommodation should simply be deported. You're with the Saturday 5 Live on GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you very much indeed. You've been sending in your emails already. Ruby says, evening Fab 5. By giving TikToker, prankster, nuisance Mizzy a platform, the BBC is encouraging other morons to do the same. Yes, I think that is a very good point indeed. Richard says, inheritance tax is a grave robber's tax on the working classes, not the wealthy, as they have complex proper ways to avoid it. There is that, trusts, etc., etc. Tharani says, you gentlemen look dashing, and the lady is, as always, looking stunning. Shine on. So, now it's time. How lovely. Everyone is looking very nice this evening. We made an effort tonight. But now it's time for our next debate. Darren is going to tell us why he thinks virtue signalling Pride Month is a party to which many gay people are simply not invited. It's grime time.
I'll probably be cancelled again for this. An ever more bizarre flag that looks like it's about to give an epileptic a seizure. A party to which many gay people that believe in biological sex aren't invited. A smorgasbord of pronouns like they, them, that translate, in my view, as me, me, me. Every big corporation in the land changing its logo to show how progressive it is until, of course, you look at their logos in Muslim countries. A move from LGB to LGBT to LGBTQI to 2SLGBTQQIA+. No, dear audience, you don't need to adjust your television set or your radio. I am not suffering a malfunction. It sounds more like a secure sodden passport than a group of people. I had a good laugh today at the US Navy changing its social media branding to Pride Brandon. Yes, we're going to blast your nation, but don't worry, we've plastered our profiles in rainbow colours. So actually, it's a progressive plundering. A few weeks ago, I popped into a gay bar in Newcastle and I was told by some overweight bloke wearing a wig and some heels that someone that worked for GB News wasn't welcome. In actually purporting to become more inclusive, this movement has become more intolerant and intolerable. I was battered more than a cod in a chippy at school for being a gay lad on a council estate in County Durham. So I tell you this for free, I won't be lectured by some blue-haired, they-them attention-seeking twerp on not being a real gay. I've got no pride in a flag and a movement that stands for sexualisation with drag queens with double entendre names performing for children. I've got no pride in the indoctrination of kids with new genders and sexualities. And most horrifically, I have absolutely no pride in the mutilation of minors in the name of gender affirmation. So maybe I don't belong to this ugly eyesore of a flag and the movement behind it. I like blokes, that's about it. Doesn't define me, and we ought not let it define Britain through its ideology either.
Wow.
Well, tell us what you really think, Darren.
Wow. Aaron, come on, you must disagree with all of that. Are you an ally? Will you be at a pride parade? Will you be waving the Progress Pride flag saying, come on, all children, chop your bits off, all the rest of it?
What you've done there, and it's a very effective rhetorical tactic, Darren, is you've bunched lots of stuff in there. So I think...
That's what the flag does.
Well,
true.
No, but Darren's saying he's better than that. So I think pride is a net good. I think it's very good that we've destigmatised bisexuality and homosexual relationships in this country over the last 20, 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're a bit younger than me, but I remember it really beginning to happen late 1990s, you know, Mark on EastEnders, the first kiss, etc. We've come so far since then. So I think it's a net good. I think it's good that people feel they can celebrate who they are. On the corporate stuff, you're entirely right. It's clearly absurd. And I think we're at a moment now where, for the LGBT movement, there's clearly a wider discussion about, you know, how people want to be represented. And, of course, it is a very broad movement and people are going to have lots of differences. It's a very heterogeneous movement. And I think the experience you had in that bar, for instance, I mean, I'm sorry to hear that, it sounds like some people want quite a homogenous movement. And clearly when you're talking about, you are talking about millions of people in this country, right? You're talking about, what, six, let's say 6 million people. You're going to have people of all kinds of colours and creeds and beliefs. And so I think those tensions kind of, given the LGBT movement and its normalisation, that's kind of inevitable, isn't it?
It's like BAME, isn't it? Black and ethnic minority, or minority ethnic, just groups everyone together.
Yeah.
As long as you're not white. And this just groups everyone who's not straight altogether. That would annoy me if I had a different
it's a bit
sexual
like,
preference. I'm not, I'm not necessarily the same as someone just because of their
Exactly.
preference.
It's like saying that through the feminist movement, every single woman has exactly the same view, you know, who are the majority of people in
and
this
that's why
country.
I've never been a team feminist, because I feel like you have to sign up then to so many beliefs on other things, politics, on how you view society, on absolutely everything, when really it's just your sexuality or the fact that you think women should be equal.
Well, you know what? Is there not a bigger question here? Why do corporations feel as though they have to get these flags up there? Why did people feel as though they had to take the knee? It's because we currently live in a culture where if you don't ridiculously virtue signal, the assumption is either that you are a frothing racist homophobe or that you can be accused of being one, OK? And this is absolutely staggering. So this fake virtue signalling, like you go into Sainsbury's and buy a big gay bunch of bananas that's got a rainbow flag on it.
Isn't it just cheap? It's just cheap.
It's nonsense.
It's cheap. Like, if that kind of corporate social responsibility cost a company millions of dollars, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. It's just
They spend so much money on it, on diversity and inclusion managers who think up this kind of thing.
That's separate.
But they work on this kind of stuff. Or you have a BLM workshop at work. One of my former employers spent a whole week doing all of these different workshops.
What's bad about that? We've gone from LGBT stuff to BLM stuff. What's bad about an inclusion officer?
Because it's costly to businesses. I think businesses, first and foremost, well, I don't agree with a lot of things that they would have had in these workshops, I'm sure. But the problem is that it's not good for the businesses either. I don't know why they do it.
It actually is. It is in a way,
costly.
because actually, with an inclusion officer's job, part of their role is to actually know the law to protect the company from being sued by somebody who may have an objection against the company. So that's what it's there for.
But you have a company hiring someone for thousands of pounds to come in and tell the staff about white privilege and then go home. I mean, seriously,
And you've come
that's what
from
happens.
Sky, right? You've worked at Sky Sports before, right? I mean, they have gone off the bloody cliff, right? They're so involved in whackery and wokery.
We were told overnight we had to wear badges for all sorts of different stuff.
You had to?
Yeah, we had to. Yeah, we were told it wasn't.
Honestly, I think football players
it wasn't
these
forced,
days.
it wasn't mandated.
I was going to say, I don't think that's legal, right?
No, it's not. But people put pressure on. I was in
If
Greece
you
last week.
don't, you're exactly what Patrick said. You're a racist or a bigot.
Very difficult to object to putting on a badge.
People say this about the poppy, though, don't they? To play devil's advocate, they say, there's so much pressure to wear a poppy. It's almost mandated.
They do, but do you know what, though? I think it's going to be, when one day soon, that pride flag is going to look like a sodden patchwork quilt.
I think there's something in what Aaron said, which is that, I mean, I have seen, absolutely, the total normalisation of a vast smorgasbord of different sexualities, which is as it should be. You should not have to, go through the kind of bullying you went through at school, kind of bullying I saw at school as well at times. And I would hope that, look, there's always going to be idiots out there, there's always going to be bullies out there, but I would hope that has been squeezed into a very small minority. But one thing I would say is that there's some of these, kind of LGBTQ plus pressure groups, as it were. Yeah. I think with the advent of gay marriage and the normalisation in society, maybe got a lot of what they were asking for and wanted, and now I would be personally concerned that they want to go that one step further, and that's where we start seeing things in early years education that I just don't think need to be there.
Exactly. And Aaron, that's an interesting point, actually. As someone on the left, do you see the grift as what I would brand it as, from the likes of Stonewall, who, a bit like St George in retirement, they've killed the dragon in securing equality for everyone, and now, of course, they're just trying to find other ways to make money, and they're now latching on to the trans debate.
I try and look at the LGBT stuff as, obviously, I'm a straight heterosexual man, so that's the caveat. But I try and look at these things as a civil liberties issue, fundamentally, and I think that's the prism through which I try and look at stuff through. And I think once you talk about civil liberties for children, it starts to get quite ambiguous. That said, I personally feel that if a young child wants their gender affirmed rhetorically, they want particular pronouns, I don't really see what that costs somebody else. Yeah. And I'd wonder, would you say, no, we're going to call you...
Some people, they think it costs reality.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Can I just ask, Darren, you've talked about Pride as an event, as in, major cities around Europe and around the world. I don't remember them being quite as emotive and as contentious, maybe up until about 5 years ago. Do you think it needs some reforming, maybe like scaling back somehow, or the messages will change, or what?
I would just stop them altogether. I think it's a narcissistic parade of people who just want to show off their bits, to be honest.
The police get out the baton.
Yeah. Anyway, right, we're going to have to leave it there. So still ahead, Aaron's going to tell us why all under 45-year-olds have been let down by the importance that were placed on universities, and Patrick's going to tell us why asylum seekers who refuse accommodation should just be deported. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. You've been sending us more messages, so I'm going to read out a couple. Jade says, Darren, that was simply amazing. Lol.
Well, what can I say, Jade? Thank you.
Peter says, you put the pride nonsense perfectly, especially regarding our little ones who are our future. Well, there you go. Lots of praise for Darren. Mary says, best programme on TV, gives me hope in the future with lots of thought-provoking ideas. Lovely. Aww. Thank you very much for sending those in. Please do keep them coming. We like the praise. But now it's time for our next debate.
Up next, it's time for some socialist sugar. Aaron is going to tell us why a generation of millennial Marxists have been let down by the importance we place on universities and how we fund them. It's time for Bastani's broadside. Take it away, Aaron.
I'm loving these intros. So I want to make a broad appeal here to many people, actually, on not just the left, but the right and the centre too. And that's to say that our university sector isn't working in this country. They have been held in very high esteem for centuries. We have several universities in the world's top 20 in this country, so they are absolutely world-class institutions, but they're failing people who graduate from them with massive amounts of debt, and also, at the same time, we're not producing enough doctors, nurses, huge shortages in a range of professions. And perhaps most importantly, and this is something we don't talk about enough when it comes to universities, is the graduate dividend. So the average male graduate in this country earns around £153,000 more than they would have if they hadn't gone to university. Now, in the United States, that figure is £420,000, obviously translated from dollars into pounds. So that dividend from studying at university is almost 3 times higher in the US. In France and Germany, it's around £250,000, so significantly higher still. So we have major problems with regards to higher education. It's not working for graduates because they're in massive amounts of debt. Often it doesn't pay for them to study. Just look at a nurse. They're seeing falling real pay because the government won't give them pay rises. At the same time, they may have £50,000 worth of debt. And it's not working either. And this is hugely important for people who never graduated either, because you live in a country where we don't have enough teachers, nurses, doctors, massive shortages in vocations that create real value, from computer science to engineering. And I think we need a sensible conversation about how we do HE in this country, and we shouldn't just demonise students who want lower fees and less debt, because there's a big conversation about the public good and how we do things differently.
Yeah. May I butt in there? That was great, but could that dividend be explained actually by the funding models of universities? Because in America, they are so expensive, and you have to pay some of it up front, of course, that people are more selective with the courses that they choose. Because would you admit that in this country, young people have sometimes been guided wrongly towards degrees that will add no benefit to their career?
They've been told they can be anything.
Told they can be anything.
Yeah.
Put on courses in, let's say, sociology. Sociology or something like that at a second-rate university or a third-rate university. They may have not done very well in their A-levels at all. They're put in university where they have huge amounts of debt. And then, you know, of course they're not going to get a better job as a result.
So I don't think that's the common experience for most students. So most people who study in this country are doing business degrees. That's the first thing. Most people aren't studying humanities or foreign languages. Most people are studying business. And I think, for instance...
Foreign languages, I study those. That's a proper degree.
I'm not knocking it. But I think, so that's the first point, is that very few people actually study these degrees that we tend to really castigate. And we can have a conversation about whether or not we should be studying them, but they're not the major problem. The major problem for me is, I would agree probably to some extent with you, which is we don't have enough people in the right jobs we need to be a successful society and economy. Nursing, like I say, doctors, engineers, computer scientists. That's a major, major problem. It's a major worry.
But would you tell a kid to scrap their media degree and actually, you know, why don't you go and study sciences and become a doctor?
I'll say one quick thing.
Or would you say everyone should be able to choose what they want to do and we should just all pay for it?
I think that you shouldn't have to go to university to be a success. And I think along with rethinking higher education, the fact that we pay apprentices, the minimum wage for apprentices in this country, I think it's about £4.50. It's crazy.
Shocking.
What 16-year-old kid is going to want to work for that money? You say, well, look, in a few years you'll be a bricklayer or you'll be an electrician and you'll be on great money. 16-year-olds don't think like that.
They're told that. In the same way we're told that the university is going to be the key to all of our future success, then maybe they would.
But isn't this yet another problem this country can trace back to Tony Blair? Education. That man is absolutely unflushable, OK? You can trace back every single societal issue to Tony Blair if you look hard enough. But we need to also stop stigmatising people who, let's say they're not made for the way that we are examined in schools at the moment.
That was the whole point of the grammar system.
Stop stigmatising them. Go and say to them, just quickly, you know, look, if you do want to go and get a practical trade, we should hold that in higher esteem as a society than we actually do.
But that's what the grammar system did. It separated at 11 years old kids who went to grammar school, maybe went into more cognitive professions, from those who went into more vocational professions, who went to technical schools.
But the left hate grammar schools because
yes, I know
they think that, you know, you're writing off kids at a younger age and it's not good for equality, etc., etc. But I don't understand that argument.
I'll tell you something, right? My business is buy-to-let, right? I have student properties and I rent them out to students. And so I see applications coming in, mostly from overseas, actually, and I've noticed that the intake I get from Africa and in Asia and places like that, they don't come to do some of the courses that you're talking about there. They're coming to do stuff that leads directly to a job. They're not doing it at fashionable universities. I rent to places like Staffordshire University and Central Lancashire and places like that. These aren't fashionable universities. They aren't Abbott League or Abbott Group universities, but they're choosing courses that lead directly to work. Whether they do that work here or go back home and do it there, it's very interesting because they're strategising and they're making their choices more pointed.
But Aaron, though, is your argument that actually, as far as the debt burden's concerned, that we should scrap certain fees altogether?
Yeah, I think we have a national emergency with the NHS, for instance. So I think with nurses, I think we should scrap their existing debt, and I think we should probably scrap tuition fees for certain subjects.
I think most people would agree with you on that, but I don't see why a hairdresser in Kendal should be paying for the student loan of someone doing well in Knightsbridge, for example.
Well, you could say that about any public service. You could say that around transport infrastructure. You can say that about the NHS.
No, because hairdressers drive.
I'm going to have to stop you there.
Well, they might use it.
On that note, still ahead. Last but not least, may I just say that sociology, I wasn't slagging off sociology as a degree. I was just saying that it's not a high-earning degree if you look at the stats. Anyway, still ahead. Last but not least, Patrick is going to tell us why asylum seekers who refuse accommodation should just be deported.
Or study sociology.
You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, the government silenced COVID critics during the pandemic. Is anyone surprised? Plus, as the excellent UK-Australia trade deal kicks in, Brexit Britain is proving the doubters wrong. My Mark Meets guest is the extraordinarily brave war hero Craig Harrison, famous for the longest sniper shot in the world, 2.5 kilometres. Talk about hitting the targets. In my take at 10, the Harry and Meghan brand is in free fall. If you bought shares in this self-absorbed duo, I would advise you to sell, sell, sell. Plus US news with American showbiz queen Kinsey Schofield, my top pundits, tomorrow's papers and Harry Redknapp live on the show, discussing the FA Cup final and why Just Stop Oil are targeting professional sport. We're live from 9 till 11 on GB News.
It's all kicking off here, I tell you. Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, cheers very much as well for all of your emails about tonight's topics. Claire says, in my day, students didn't get loans. They took jobs to pay their way through university. That way, they also got a work ethic. Anne says, this is an absolutely superb panel and your fiver is in the post. Amusing, appears totally unscripted, just great. Freddie says, your programmes are all fab, including all your presenters, but since recently starting to watch GB News, Patrick gets the Victoria Cross for me.
That's an outrage. He's already got a big enough head.
Thank you. Well, hey, now it's time. It's time for our next debate, and it's not on the size of Patrick's head. Up next, it is Patrick. About the asylum seekers who refuse accommodation and why they should simply be deported. It's time for Christie's Kicks Off.
OK, all right. So people who refuse to live in taxpayer-funded, perfectly legal, perfectly serviceable hotels should be given some choices. We'll fly you straight home, OK? We'll take you to Rwanda, or you can video your mates on the other side of the channel and tell them not to bother because it's clearly awful here. We have a situation at the moment where asylum seekers are kicking off big time because they don't want to live in the kind of accommodation that homeless military veterans would absolutely love to be housed in. Wi-Fi, food, bed, board, a little bit of an allowance. Take a look at this.
And why do they not like this hotel?
This hotel is not good, really. You have too much small.
Room's very small. Bathroom too small?
Yeah, too much.
I'm so sorry about that. That's really shocking that the bathroom is too small. But you have Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
You have Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi, but...
Wi-Fi, is it good or too... Bad Wi-Fi?
Yeah,
Shocking.
£8.
So you get £8 a week, plus food, plus accommodation. You get free Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi is a bit slow. I'm sorry about that. We'll try and see if we can help.
Yes, well, there we go, OK? I mean, the reality is, OK, that the European Union is treating asylum seekers worse than we are. And these people, in many cases, have travelled across 2 continents, and they clearly have not been happy with the treatment anywhere they've gone. They are not asylum seekers, in my view, they are asylum shoppers. So, those are my views, OK? Aaron, what do you think?
It was a strange video, but what I'd say to you, Patrick, is those young people, youngish people, they're in a really strange situation. They can't work.
Yeah.
They can't earn money. They can't access the kinds of things which give us self-respect. And I feel like, OK, it seems strange to say, if you've been in Sangatte or a camp city in France, to say, well, actually, this room in central London isn't good enough. But I can absolutely see why they would be miserable, depressed. And I do think a significant amount of that could be mitigated by letting them work.
You think you should let them work? My argument with that would be that, you don't know who a lot of these people are or necessarily exactly where they've come from, so there will be some security issues at play there as well. That would be my primary concern.
And they do work as well, they just do it on the...
And we have a work visa system, and it would make a total mockery of that. If you jump on a dinghy and cross the channel, you can work here with no problems. I think what is ridiculous, and I agree with you on this one, is just how long they are being kept in these hotels.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If they knew that it was going to be 3 months, you got a yes, no, then they probably wouldn't be kicking up this fuss, right?
But they should make more of it. I think we should seriously be putting videos like that out and beaming them across the channel. Because if people seriously think that this is a land of milk and honey, and I'm not surprised, given the fact that in some cases, like in Greece, they're kept on islands, and then they are told, OK, you've been granted refugee or asylum status, you've got 30 days to get out of here with no real chance of a job or anything, so basically you're homeless, so they move them on. We should be actually advertising some of this and say, look, you're not going to be happy here, so don't bother coming.
But also, a lot of people have pointed out that they would love to live in central London in Zone 1, Pimlico, one of the most expensive areas of the country. And we have this strange, bizarre situation where you have asylum seekers in prime property, real estate, in central London, while more and more people are having to move out and out and out and out and out.
And I tell you what, the sight of reading, actually, that the Home Office officials went in after seeing this protest and thought, well, we've got to deal with this. What about a whole host of problems that we've got going on where crimes aren't being investigated? You know, we've got law and order running amok in this country. But if you come here illegally, rock up and say you're not happy with your grub or your Wi-Fi, the Home Office will come out and sort it out for you, no questions.
I mean, I was dead against the Iraq war, and I think we made a huge amount of mistakes in Afghanistan, so I'm not disputing the fact that there are people in those countries who do need help.
We don't know if he's Iraqi, that's just what he said. Like, we don't know
what I do know is that there are people who fought for this country in Iraq and in Afghanistan who are homeless, and there are people from those countries who we are giving free hotels to.
I would say that, look, just to add to what people have already said here, I think it's partly, like I said, they can't work. It's a very miserable existence. But also, it's not like being in prison because, of course, you can leave, you can walk around. But that process, being several years, again, must be incredibly miserable. And there's a part of me, and I'm sure many of you guys might disagree with this, there's a part of me that thinks the Tories want this process to be dysfunctional and long-winded, because fundamentally, the more we have the issue of illegal migration up the issues in terms of the most salient issue, it plays very well for them.
You might be right, but I'm not so.
I think the numbers of immigration, the treatment of immigrations is as it is because successive governments over the last 20, 25 years are absolutely happy where it is. And on your point about the inability to work, I think that is actually counterproductive because that's when they drift into criminality, that's when they start dealing drugs, that's when they start getting others involved in anything else they might get involved in and causing problems in towns and cities.
So you wouldn't want them to work?
No, I think I do want them to work.
Yeah, OK.
Yeah, I'm going with you.
But why have worker visas?
Because that's the thing, because a lot of people come across the channel now from India, for example, which would imply to me, given that it's quite easy to get a visa if you're coming from India, that they are people who would not meet an economic threshold.
Yes, all right,
exactly.
We're going to have to leave it there. Personally, I don't think it's going to work well for the Tories because I think they're going to be clobbered at the next election over this very issue. But it's been another great show. Cheers for watching. Linda says, great show, really entertaining debates, everyone. What more can we say to that? Next up, Mark Dolan. Cheers for watching.
Good evening, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. It does turn quite chilly tonight, but with high pressure in charge, we'll see plenty of sunshine through Sunday and temperatures climbing, particularly in the west. High pressure centre just to the north of us means the wind's still coming in from the northeast, so eastern coast a little bit chilly, but further west temperatures remaining above average for the time of year. So fine end to the day, we will see some low cloud across northeast Scotland and also eastern England feeding slowly back inland, making its way towards the Midlands during the early hours. But there'll be lots of dry weather around, clear skies in the west, and we could see a few shallow mist and fog patches and temperatures dipping into single figures. So yes, a chilly start to Sunday morning, but for many a sunny start. We do have low cloud, central and eastern parts. This slowly burns back towards the coast. I think eastern parts of Scotland, towards the east coast of England, could see some low cloud at times, and with that northeasterly breeze it will be quite chilly, temperatures struggling. Grimsby there 13 degrees, but come further west temperatures rising into the low 20s. Locally 25 degrees is possible, say for parts of West Wales. Into the evening time, plenty of dry weather to come, maybe an isolated shower across Scotland, but most places dry. And then overnight we see the low cloud pushing back in from the North Sea, thicker and lower, and this could just produce a few spots of drizzle, though western areas staying dry and clear once more, and temperatures again into single figures. So a bit of a westy split to start Monday morning. Sunny skies towards Northern Ireland, Scotland, West Wales, the West Country, elsewhere quite cloudy, but again the cloud through the day should lift and break and slowly retreat towards the coast. It might take its time, and temperatures rising to the mid-20s in the west. And Tuesday and Wednesday staying very similar, further sunshine and higher temperatures.